After the atomic bomb, our thoughts changed dramatically.
But we didn't know how bad it was or how big it was. All we knew was the war was over.
I just would not be here. I feel that I would not be here if they had not dropped the atomic bomb.
During World War I, weapons such as grenades, tanks, mustard gas, and torpedoes were used by both sides, often causing heavy casualties. Both sides wanted a weapon to end all weapons, one that could wipe out entire enemy cities with a single use. No such weapon of this caliber was invented at the time. Years later, in 1938, two scientists, Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, accidentally create barium from uranium via nuclear fission after working with another scientist, Lisa Meitner, for a few years before she had to leave Berlin due to the persecution of Jews by the Nazi Party. The news of the discovery worried three physicists who had immigrated to America from Axis-powered countries. They were Albert Einstein, Leo Szilard, and Enrico Fermi. They realized that with this technology, Germany could create a superweapon and become even more of a threat than they already were. Einstein and Szilard wrote a letter to then-President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, recommending he start developing an atomic bomb before any of the Axis powers could. By the time this letter reached Roosevelt, World War II had already begun. In response to the letter, Roosevelt gathered a group of scientists and created the Uranium Committee to determine how possible a nuclear chain reaction could be. Then, in March 1941, MAUD, the British counterpart to the Uranium Committee, released a statement saying a nuclear chain reaction was possible. When this news got around, the US started changing their nuclear program under the S1 Committee. That same year, on December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, killing over 2,000 Americans. With this event, Roosevelt announced that the U.S. had officially entered the war. This also made Japan another top enemy for America to worry about. Atomic research occurred at several different universities around the country, including the Rad Lab at University of California at Berkeley, where Ernest Lawrence was the head of operation. Another location was Columbia University in New York, where Enrico Fermi and Leo Szilard were working. Then in 1942, production was moved to the Metallurgical Laboratory at the University of Chicago, where Chicago Pile 1 was created. However, the project still lacked the funds it needed to go full scale, and enlisted the help of the U.S. Army. On August 13, 1942, the S1 Committee and the entire nuclear bomb project was renamed the Manhattan Project, which was short for the Manhattan Engineer District. General Leslie Groves was appointed head of the entire project. Later that year, on December 2nd, Chicago Pile 1 went critical and created the world's first self-sustaining chain reaction. This new discovery created a useful way to make plutonium for bombs, and let the project stop relying on outside sources for the ore. The project then had to decide where a weapons laboratory would be built. The location they decided on was the Los Alamos Ranch School in Ottawee, New Mexico. General Groves then appointed a theoretical physicist from the University of California at Berkeley named J. Robert Oppenheimer as lead scientist of the new testing facility. This location would be where further research would be continued and the construction of the bomb would occur. In 1943, a uranium enrichment plant was created in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and allowed production on the uranium gun-type bomb to go into full scale. In early 1944, General Groves and J. Robert Oppenheimer start to plan for the first test of a new type of bomb, called the plutonium implosion device. Oppenheimer and his team at Los Alamos would develop and prepare this test. In the Pacific, on February 19, 1945, Marines landed on Iwo Jima, a Japanese observation post. After almost 4 months, American troops captured the base. America had been making slow advances through the Pacific, pushing Japan back. However, this push was still not significant enough to end the war. Throughout 1944 and 45, President Roosevelt's health had been declining slowly. On April 12th, while vacationing in Warm Springs, Georgia, President Roosevelt died of a brain hemorrhage during his 4th term in office at the age of 63. This news shook the citizens of the United States. Other Allied leaders such as Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin paid their respects to the president. His vice president, Harry Truman, would be sworn in on the same day. While he was the vice president, Truman didn't know about the Manhattan Project and was first told of the project after a few weeks in office. Truman would be the president for the rest of the war, and now know about the project and its potential. On May 7, 1945, Germany signed an instrument of surrender with America, as well as signing 3 others with Britain, the Soviet Union, and France. However, America was still fighting with Japan in the Pacific, and had been for almost 4 years since Pearl Harbor. After more than a year of planning and development, the scientists at Los Alamos were finally ready to test a bomb. The plutonium implosion device, nicknamed Gadget, was the first of its kind, and the scientists were unsure if it would even detonate. On July 16, 1945, in Alamogordo, New Mexico, more than 200 miles south of the Los Alamos facility, Gadget was detonated at the Trinity site. The 15-kiloton explosion awed the scientists that were watching. Kenneth Bainbridge, one of the directors of the test, later said, "No one who saw it could forget it. A foul and awesome display." This would be the first ever nuclear bomb detonation in history, and a triumphant success for the project. 5 days later, on the 21st, President Truman would receive notice of the success, and finally decided to use these weapons in war. He then met with Joseph Stalin, and they discussed where they could drop the bombs on Japan. On July 26th, President Truman issued the Potsdam Declaration, which demanded Japan's surrender, otherwise prompt and utter destruction would ensue. By this time, the USS Indianapolis had already delivered Little Boy, a uranium gun-type bomb, to Tinian Island, along with plans for the attack. Japan would reject the Potsdam Declaration and refuse to surrender. On Tinian Island, Little Boy was loaded onto the bomber Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets. On August 6, 1945, the bomber and a small group of other B-29s entered the airspace above Hiroshima. Little Boy was then dropped out of the bay doors. 44 seconds later, the bomb detonates. The city of Hiroshima had almost been completely flattened. Buildings and people were vaporized. Over 70,000 citizens were almost killed instantly. The Japanese army was shocked, yet still had no plans to surrender. America prepared to drop more bombs until Japan gave up. The next bomb, Fat Man, was a plutonium implosion device like Gadget. 3 days later, on August 29th, Fat Man was placed on another B-29 named Boxcar, and another group took off from Tinian Island to drop the bomb on the city of Kokura. However, haze and bad weather conditions caused the bomber to reroute. Fat Man was then detonated over the city of Nagasaki, killing more than 60,000 citizens. After this, Japan gave up and signed the Instrument of Surrender on September 2nd, 1945, officially ending World War II. Even after the bombs were dropped, radiation poisoning continued to kill survivors of the atomic attacks. By the end of 1945, more than 180,000 Japanese citizens died.
It's too bad that so many people had to die, like a couple 100,000, Japanese were killed. That's sad. Even though they're the enemy, you hate to see something like that happen. So the atomic bomb is worth its weight in gold, but it's very destructive.
However, the end of the war saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of troops still fighting in the Pacific, and let those troops go home to their families.
There would be many, many more thousands of U.S. lives lost.
I'm glad that it happened, personally, because I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you otherwise.
In the years after the bombing, the Soviet Union and America started an arms race, threatening each other with nuclear weapons. Even today, countries threaten each other with total nuclear destruction using atomic missiles, striking fear into those living there. The nuclear age has brought on great triumphs as well. Nuclear medicine has helped diagnose potentially deadly diseases and save the lives of thousands of people. Nuclear energy has also come from the atomic age. Today, nuclear power plants power thousands of homes and businesses around the world. The Manhattan Project created a beast. This beast ended the deadliest war in history while taking the lives of more than 150,000 innocent people. While a scientific triumph, the bomb has proven itself to be a superweapon of mass destruction.
Since that time, we have continued to see bloodshed, and my thoughts are, when are we ever going to learn how to live together in peace and harmony?